My name is Nancy Brookhart, and I've been an attender and then a member of Urban Abbey for about 10-ish years. Each week, we are invited to talk with those at our tables about something that gave us joy during the previous week, an event or a moment that we were glad to be a part of. There have been times when I struggled with that assignment because my life is so ordinary. I'm such a normal Nancy. Or a nonsensical Nancy, I don't know. But anyway, last year I took a leap of faith and I volunteered at Liberty Elementary. I took an inventory of what I had to offer, and it wasn't much. I had time and I could listen. I can read and I can do math if they do the math the way I learned it in the 1960s, which is not so. So I didn't volunteer to do any math tutoring. Anyway, I'm curious about people, and I'll talk with almost anyone to learn their story. I've never been athletic, and I knew I couldn't run after the kiddos. So, what could I do? At last year's Pi-Off, I spoke with the Liberty's principal, Ms. Perez Moses, and I asked if it would be helpful if there was someone to listen to the kids read. I filled out an online job application for volunteers, as is required by OPS. I contacted, once that was approved by Human Resources, I contacted Ms. Perez Moses again, and she connected me with the second grade teacher. We agreed that I would come once a week to listen to the students and urge, coach, correct, and praise their reading skills. I haven't had much contact with 7- and 8-year-olds for quite some time. My kids are way past that age. My grandkids are past that age, come to think about it. Anyway, these 7- and 8-year-olds are curious creatures, much like I am. So we were a pretty good match. I learned about how you find out if you're going to have a baby sister or a baby brother. It all has to do with cake. Cake is the answer. Pink cake or blue cake. Somebody,
make a note of that.
yeah, write that down. Yeah. Let's see. I learned what they could or couldn't do because of where they lived. I learned about their families, about their pets. And when you ask about their pets, they tell you about the ones that have died also. They count everyone. Some can't have pets because of where they live. I learned about their favorite foods, their favorite activities. And then I told them about my life. They were kind, and they made allowances for my limited memory and hearing. When they saw me waiting to be admitted, when they saw me waiting to be admitted to the classroom, I heard excited voices saying, I'm sorry. They'd say, Mrs. Nancy is here. And I got so many hugs. At the end of the school year, they had cards for me. I called them my report cards. And you can tell they were coached to write some things, but and that's okay. That's okay. And I got a couple of pieces of blank paper too, so. Or some that quit writing in the middle of a word. It's okay. I brought those with me, so if you want to see them, you can. In June, I think it was June, or sometime this summer, we met our daughter and son-in-law for lunch after church. As we were finishing lunch, a little boy approached our table with a woman that I assume was his mother. He introduced me saying, "This is Mrs. Nancy." He gave me a great big hug. That was better than any paycheck. Much better. It was the moment I was glad to be a part of. It was my moment of joy. If you want to volunteer just once or each week, think about what you can offer. Fill out the online application and talk with the principal. Jim and Kathy Morley also volunteer in the library, and Rand volunteers in the library too. I'm sure they would be happy to share their experiences with you. Pastor Deborah hands out condiments in the lunchroom, and I listen. So what can you do to help? Can you chaperone a field trip? Seems like a tall order to me. Sure. I don't know about that. Have you taken a trip that you can share pictures? Can you help with an art project? Are you handy with scissors and Elmer's glue? Can you help clean up a room after they finish the art project? Do you like to garden? How could that help the school? Can you knit hats and scarves and mittens? I don't know what your skills are and how those skills could give teachers, the students, and the community, but you'll have to just think about that and see what you can do. Can you buy a gift card for them to pass out? They want $30 gift cards, and if you can't afford $30, maybe you can find some friends, and maybe 5 of you can go together and get one gift card or something. I don't know. There's many, many ways to help our schools. And it all brings so much joy. So create some joy somehow. Thank you.
Good morning. Many of you have heard me talk multiple times since I've been at Liberty for 22 years. I thought it would be great for you to hear from one of our kindergarten teachers, Danielle Gilbert, about her Liberty experience.
Hi, so I'm usually used to talking to people much smaller than you guys, so bear with me. So I'm Danielle. I've worked at Liberty now for 6 years as a kindergarten teacher with Louisa. I wanted to be a teacher for a really long time because of good teachers and the influence of kids can have. But I wanted to talk about how I came to Liberty. So I started in Sterling, Nebraska as a preschool teacher for 2 years. And the community sport there was great, but my husband got a job in OPS. So I came to Omaha to follow him here. And I taught 1 year of kindergarten in another school district where I felt a lot of pressure from state testing and just making sure my students were absolutely the best at academics, but I felt like there was so much missing. I watched my friend who was a kindergarten teacher in OPS, and she was posting student work and projects that were based on the whole child, and they were so playful and fun, and I was like, how do you find time to do this with your kids? This is so important. And these kids were working on social skills and compassion along with their math and reading. And she said that OPS makes time for that and prioritizes that. So that's when I decided to make the switch. And I applied and interviewed, my first interview with Liberty, where I talked about my friend's posts and I said how important that was for me to make sure that I'm not just pushing this, you have to be the best at academics, but also addressing everything that a child can be. And Louisa let me know in that interview that she was a part of the OPS Play Initiative, where they really make sure they're prioritizing all of the parts of a student, their social, emotional, their joy in learning. And I took the job right away, and I found so much joy in watching my students find a love of learning and hearing them wanting to come to school, hearing them being so excited to read to other people has been so fun and so full of joy. But also since then, I've learned the joy in being a teacher. Sorry, I am tricky to talk in front of people. But I've also learned that joy in teaching can also come from so many more things than just watching my students find a love of learning. It comes from teaching and learning with others who are just as dedicated to our students, learning from the other Liberty teachers who are here today, and our strong admin and supportive, compassionate leaders at Liberty have been so helpful in finding joy. But also our supportive community partners, such as a coffee shop, bookstore, church, who give us their prayers, donate their time, donate their so many different things to second grade classrooms, to our librarians, and their coffee. The first days back to school was really helpful. And all of the kind things that this community partnership has done have also helped to bring so much joy to our students, along with all of the other things that OPS prioritizes. So, thank you.
Good morning. My name's Issa. I use they, them pronouns. I do all the youth programming here at the Abbey. And today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite teachers, which is the channel PBS Kids. Sorry, no, that's a joke. But I am really excited. PBS Kids, if you couldn't tell from my personality, I'm the perfect stereotype of a PBS kid. My family didn't have cable, so I grew up on a diet of Sesame Street and Curious George and Barney and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Super Y and Sid the Science Kid. I caught the tail end of Reading Between the Lions and Reading Rainbow long before the LeVar Burton resurgence, and it's thanks to Mr. Rogers that I know how fortune cookies and crayons are made, and thanks to Sesame Street that I know how to count, and thanks to Sid the Science Kid that I have any recall of the scientific process. In fact, in this sermon series on wisdom of the small screen, I think I can safely say that at least half of my general wisdom comes directly from PBS. My day revolved around our local PBS station. If you got ready fast enough in the morning, you could catch wild kratts before school, where I learned all about all sorts of creature powers, like how basilisk lizards run so fast that they create air bubbles buoyant enough to let them walk on water. And once homework was done, there was Electric Company, where pre-Hamilton Lin-Manuel Miranda taught me phonics and how to torment my sister with beatboxing. Word Girl had a cast of villains that could rival DC, and Arthur taught me that gay rats could get married, and on Martha Speaks, I learned the benefits of feeding a dog alphabet soup. I'm being a bit facetious here, but I learned a lot from PBS, and I was lucky because PBS wasn't my only teacher. My grandma watched me every day when my parents were at work, and I was really lucky because she lived right next door to me. All I had to do was gallop across the bumpy sidewalk to her house for a full morning of PBS programming and a seemingly unlimited supply of Dum Dums lollipops. My grandma had her doctorate in education as a reading specialist, and although she was retired by then, all her mail came addressed to Dr. Mary Manhart. As a kid who was glued to PBS and Caillou and Barney, that didn't mean a lot to me. But last year I found her dissertation, An Analysis of Affixed Words, 10 Trade-Selected Books. Now, if you aren't a linguist fiend or a PBS aficionado, affixes are the parts that you add on to the root of a word to change its meaning. This means that my grandma spent the better part of the early 1990s painstakingly analyzing the presence of prefixes and suffixes in a set of children's books and short chapter books. I didn't learn any of this until years after she had passed away. We read together, but more often we just watched hours of PBS Kids side by side in her living room over slices of American cheese straight from the plastic. And my other favorite snack, guys, don't judge too hard, extra crunchy peanut butter with extra peanuts on top. Thanks, Ju. When Deborah asked me to talk about PBS this week, I never imagined that it would have been defunded. Here's the thing about my grandma. Besides being a reading specialist in OPS for 40 years, she was a staunch Catholic and a lifelong Republican. Her house was full of the crap they send you when you donate too much money to televangelists. But my grandma loved PBS Kids, probably more than I do, because I was the oldest grandchild, and even as I grew up, she spent the next 10 years watching every PBS Kids show on repeat with my brother and my sister and my cousins. She knew all those plot lines better than I did. And although I didn't know it at the time, she was an expert. She literally had her doctorate in what those PBS Kids shows were espousing. All the phonemes and phonics and affixes and root words and what to do when you come across a word that you don't know. But also how to read context clues and how to make friends and how to make mistakes and grow from it. My grandma always told me there are two things you never talk about, religion and politics. And with all due respect to my grandma, I'm gonna do both. Because as they try to shutter PBS on the pretense of conservative political ideology, I keep thinking about my grandma and how many hours she logged on our local PBS station watching her grandkids learn to read. It wasn't political, it wasn't ideological, it was just accessible. It was there when we needed it. It brought us together, young and old, conservative and liberal. PBS held us together. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting logo is literally burned into the back of my eyes. If you've never graced your local PBS station, every PBS Kids show ends the same. This program was brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you. They have a little graphic for it too, it's great. And I've been thinking about this idea a lot, especially as the Corporation for Public Broadcasting announced earlier this week that it's shutting down after 6 decades of providing everything from Mr. Rogers to Antique Roadshow to local weather alerts. And I kind of think that this message that I heard every half hour on the dot throughout my childhood is a bit like our faith. Stick with me here. This message calls us to be empowered. The wisdom of public broadcasting is that we're not just watching, we're taking part in the work, which is a lot like what we do here. Every Sunday, we take in the nourishment of communion and commit to offering it out. We take part in offering, and we invest in the work of growing the space at our table. We aren't just passive viewers. We're invested in making the world that we want to see. I didn't grow up with a strong faith tradition, but I grew up with the wisdom of PBS. It doesn't ask you to be able to afford cable or pay a subscription fee or meet a dozen prerequisites of personhood. It's for everyone. Everyone is welcome at the table. And just like our faith, the work doesn't stop when the establishment turns against us, be it the Roman Empire or the US presidential administration. If I've learned anything from a year at the Abbey, it's that Jesus' work was not popular. Jesus was making a little into a lot and demanding that everyone was worth providing for. And PBS kids told me the same thing over and over like clockwork as a kid, that everyone belonged, that everyone mattered, that everyone was part of the work. And so even as we face changes, as stations across the country shut down, as TV screens grow dark, even as our public services are attacked and devalued, even as they defund Head Start programs and Sesame Street in one fell swoop, I want to remind you that you aren't helpless. That this program, the work of our faith, is brought to you by viewers like you. It's time that we step up to the table and demand there be space for everyone. May it be so. Amen.